What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I literally just did a video updating the current state of the transfer portal, and yet there's already a lot more news to cover just a couple of days later. This news specifically will be focusing on all the news coming out of Athens. Jermaine Burton has officially entered the transfer portal now from the Georgia roster, and this is an interesting development because it's honestly one of the first major transfers out of Georgia that I didn't expect or really see coming, and it also adds to a pretty extensive list of transfers that are leaving Georgia this offseason. Also, in addition to that, the news comes out today that Stetson Bennett will be returning to Georgia for another season, his last season in Georgia, and so presumably he will be the starting quarterback for Georgia next season. So I'll get into that a little bit as well. And so this video will just be touching on most all of the guys who are leaving, where some of them will have landed, where those who haven't landed are going to end up yet, what it means for Georgia going forward, and just covering all of the Georgia news and portal content that I haven't gotten to yet so far because there is actually quite a bit. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So I'm going to start off with the most recent news, and that is that Georgia wide receiver Jermaine Burton has entered the portal. Now, for those unfamiliar with Burton or Georgia, Burton was a former four-star wide receiver. He was a fringe five-star coming out of high school in Louisiana. He's seen significant playing time for Georgia in his few years with the program, although he hasn't fully lived up to his talent level and the hype that was around him, likely due to some quarterback issues that Georgia's had in recent years, but mainly due to him having a lot of injuries in his time at Georgia. He hasn't really had a fully healthy season yet at Georgia, and even despite that, he's still been a pretty significant contributor to the team since he's arrived on campus and was expected to start next season at wide receiver and really lead that wide receiving corps for Georgia, especially with George Pickens heading off to the NFL. Him and Kearis Jackson were really expected to be the two leaders, with him being more of the outside wide receiver. Jackson is more of a slot wide receiver. However, it seems like that won't happen now with Burton entering the portal and leaving Georgia, and that's actually a somewhat significant loss for UGA. Not to say that they don't have depth at the position behind it, because they definitely do with guys like A.D. Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, like I said, Kearis Jackson, Arian Smith, Dominic Blaylock should be back. Also, apparently, Eric Gilbert is now supposedly back with the team, but you never know what to think with news with him at this point. He's had such an interesting and honestly strange career and journey so far that you never know what to expect with him. So I'm not counting on him being a contributor for Georgia next season. If he is, great. If not, then, it is what it is. But even without him, Georgia is very deep at every position, but also at wide receiver. So losing Burton isn't like a crusher by any means. It's not something that's going to cripple the program or anything like that. But it is a somewhat significant loss and something that is noteworthy, in my opinion. And it's unexpected as well. And like I said, the point is that the wide receiver room likely will be a spot with a lot of attrition this season. You're seeing depth players leave the program as well, guys like Justin Robinson and then walk-on Jalen Johnson, both of which got some playtime this year. Both of them have left now. There have been some rumors swirling around about Darnell Washington possibly wanting to leave the program and being unhappy with his role as more of the blocking tight end of the group, especially now that Brock Bowers took off as a freshman and kind of passed Darnell Washington. I don't know what the news that John Fitzpatrick is going to the NFL out of the tight end spot for Georgia. I don't know if that affects that at all. I don't know if there's any legitimacy to the Darnell Washington claims or rumors to begin with, but that, I just feel like it's worth saying that there are some rumors swirling around him. I've heard some rumors about Kearis Jackson possibly transferring as well, although I really doubt it. I would be much less surprised if Darnell Washington hit the portal than if Kearis Jackson did, but honestly, I would be pretty surprised if either one of them did at this point. But I was surprised that Burton hit the portal as well. As far as, where those guys who have already left are going to end up, Justin Robinson's already ended up at Mississippi State, while Jalen Johnson is a complete unknown. He was a walk-on at Georgia. There's really no telling where he's going to end up. He could be JUCO, Group of Five. He could make it to a Power Five. There's no telling, and I have no earthly idea, really, where he's going to end up at this point. I think Burton is likely going to go to LSU, in my opinion. That's his hometown. They were the next team besides Georgia in his recruiting class that was really close with him. They were actually expected to get him the whole way. He was kind of a late flip to Georgia near signing day. It was kind of a shocking addition for Georgia at that point. Also, Cortez Hankton, the former Georgia wide receiver coach, has just left Georgia for LSU, and that is his hometown as well. So that would make sense for Burton to leave with him and just move on to LSU there. That would be my guess. Other than LSU, I'm not really sure where he could end up, but he definitely is talented enough to get significant playing time and probably start most anywhere he would be to end up. But my guess for now would be LSU. Brings me to my next point, and that is Stetson Bennett. He has now announced that he is returning to Georgia for another season, and he will likely be the starting quarterback. And somehow, despite winning the national championship for Georgia last year, being the offensive MVP, this will still be a controversial topic heading into next season. There are going to be a lot of doubters for Stetson next year, just like there was this past year. A lot of people are going to call to see younger, more talented quarterbacks see the field. And on the one hand, I understand why they would want that, because you always want to develop your younger talent for the future. But on the other hand, if you simply switch Stetson Bennett's ratings out of high school with another quarterback, then everybody would be thrilled to see him return based on his on-field production. There's been a lot of social media and online hate, and I really just hate to see that from his own supposed fan base. A guy that just won them a national championship, and they're all going to just go ahead and immediately pile on him and really trash talk him in a lot of ways. And other players see that, and I wish fan bases would realize more how important their commentary about a program really is, because as a recruit, if you see that this fan base is trashing their own players who have been performing well for you and have been loyal and dutiful to the program and done everything you could ask of them, that really doesn't encourage you and make you want to go to that program. And I feel like that's something that is completely underestimated by fan bases, is that they just don't realize just how impactful their words and the narratives that they build can really be around a program. But regardless of how the fans feel about it, Stetson is back, and the mailman will almost certainly be the starting quarterback next season, at least until proven otherwise, and that does provide some semblance of continuity for a Georgia team. It's going to have a lot of roster turnover. There are some people saying that him coming back is the reason some of these receivers are transferring out. I don't think that's true. If that is true, then I feel like those receivers aren't making a great decision. If you're leaving just because Stetson is going to be the quarterback next year, that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, his numbers are comparable to JT Daniels. Daniels threw more, obviously, but Stetson Bennett was not by any means a bad quarterback. He's had 2, maybe 3 bad games. I guess 3 probably bad games in his career. And this past season, he had 1 bad game, and that was against Alabama. And then he made up for it in the second time against Alabama. So I don't know. I'm getting a little bit sick of seeing all the Stetson Bennett hate out there on the internet. So the next bit of news, which is very, very closely tied to the Stetson Bennett news, is the news that JT Daniels has also officially entered the portal now. This has been reported for a day or so that he was expected to enter the portal. He's now officially in. I touched on this in my transfer portal news update video, so I won't go too in-depth with this one. But long story short, this was expected at Georgia. Even if Stetson Bennett didn't come back, a lot of people thought JT would leave. A lot of people also assumed that Stetson was going to come back and JT would leave because of that. While some fans are going to want him to stay, he likely wouldn't have been the starter for Georgia next season regardless, especially since Stetson is coming back. And while he is talented, I don't feel like he has any more upside than any of the other quarterbacks on the roster, like Carson Beck, Brock Vandegrift, or now the freshman Gunnar Stockton. And Stetson Bennett is going to be the presumed starter for next year now that he's announced he's returning. So as far as JT goes, yes, it's a loss of a talented quarterback for Georgia, and I feel like he could be a big addition for somewhere else and be a good Power 5 level starter and potentially make an NFL draft push. But as far as it relates to just Georgia, I don't think it really hurts Georgia at all. He wasn't going to be the starter in all likelihood. He doesn't have the highest ceiling. It's not like he's a young developmental quarterback at this point. He's a one-year rental. And so it really doesn't affect Georgia at all, in my opinion. I mean, especially with Stetson returning, he seems like the obvious favorite for the quarterback job, like I said, unless one of the younger quarterbacks are going to beat him out, but that seems unlikely too at this point. So JT really doesn't hurt Georgia leaving at this point. It makes sense for both parties, in my opinion. I wish him the best, but again, it doesn't seem to be a very important loss. A very important loss for Georgia going forward. The other names out of Georgia that are in the portal are guys like Jalen Kimber, Amir Speed, and Latavius Brini, and you'll notice the trend here is that they are all DBs. Add on to this, Georgia will be losing Lewis Seen and Darian Kendrick in the secondary to the draft next season, and all of a sudden the secondary is going to be another position group with a lot of attrition for Georgia heading into next season, very similar to this past season. Now, Georgia has a lot of talent already on their roster, and they just signed an absolutely outstanding defensive back class this cycle to help offset that. But just like last season, the experience is going to be the concern. However, they will return Chris Smith at safety, Tyke Smith at safety, William Poole at the star position, and Keely Ringo as one of the two corners on the outside there. So it certainly won't be all new talent starting for them in the back end, and the new talent that they do have, like I said, is all incredibly high-level talent. They also have guys like Nyland Green and Kamari Lassiter coming back, who didn't get to play all that much last season but contributed some. There's a lot. David Daniel is back there. He's going to probably get a lot of star and safety reps as well. That doesn't mention all of the new signees. There's a lot of talent in the secondary for Georgia. I wouldn't be all that concerned about it, especially with Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp on the staff there. The secondary is going to be great. The defense is going to be great. Nothing to be too concerned about, in my opinion. As for where these players are going to end up, Kimber and Speed have already ended up in certain places. Kimber going to Florida and Speed going to Michigan State, respectively. I feel like both of those are great fits for them. Florida gets a big pickup in a young, super talented corner in Jalen Kimber. Amir Speed reunites with Mel Tucker at Michigan State on what's probably going to be a one-year rental, and I feel like he will be an absolutely outstanding addition to a secondary that desperately needed help after how poorly they performed this past season. So I feel like it's a great fit for all parties involved there. Losing Speed hurts on your experience some, but he wasn't likely going to be a starter for Georgia. If he was, he'd be a rotational guy. Jalen Kimber, you hate to see a talented DB leave, but again, Georgia is loaded with guys of his caliber at corner, and he had a chance to get lost in the rotation, and so losing him, you don't want to see it, especially to a SEC East rival like Florida, but it doesn't hurt Georgia all that much. As far as Brini goes and where he'll land, I don't know. I've heard a lot of SEC teams have interest in him, and that does seem to be a trend now. In the portal, people are just swapping teams within the same division or the same conference a lot. But we'll see how it all pans out for him. Regardless of where he goes, I expect him to be a starter wherever he lands. He started most of the season for Georgia this year before being replaced by William Poole in the Alabama SEC Championship, and then also in the Michigan game and the Alabama rematch game. But for the entirety of the regular season, Latavius Brini was a starter for Georgia. He's a very experienced guy, and I expect him to do well wherever he lands. Another point of interest for Georgia right now, not necessarily related to the portal, is the coaching staff. Like I said earlier, Cortez Hankton, the wide receivers coach, is now left for LSU. That could have a lot to do with Burton leaving as well, especially when you consider that, like I said, they're both from Louisiana. On top of that, there is a lot of rumor around the defensive back coach, Jermaine Burton, leaving Georgia. I don't know how true those are, and he does seem to still be locked in at Georgia, but there have been a lot of rumors and word about him leaving Georgia. That would be somewhat of a significant loss, but not that big because the defensive backs, and really the entire defense, but the defensive backs in particular, position coaches are great for Georgia. Obviously, you need them, but with Kirby running that defense, they're going to be fine, especially at the defensive back spot. Guys aren't committing to play for Jamil Adai on the defensive end like they would for maybe an offensive coordinator or something. Speaking of offensive coordinators, though, there's also a lot of rumors around Todd Monken, the Georgia offensive coordinator, perhaps heading back to the NFL with all of the coaching openings that they have in the NFL right now, and that certainly does make sense. I, as a Georgia fan, hope that he will stay. I think he's done an outstanding job, but I could not at all blame him for heading back to the league. All of this coaching uncertainty, though, added to the current portal environment that there is, and there's just a lot of unknowns swirling around the program right now, coming off of a national title win, and that's somewhat concerning for the Georgia fan base in particular, the loss of so many contributing pieces from the current roster, in addition to the potential of losing more pieces in the coaching staff that could then lead to more transfers. Doesn't even mention the loss of Dan Lanning to Oregon on top of all the other news surrounding the program. There's a lot of uncertainty going on right now around Georgia. However, despite all of those potential uncertainties, I assure you that Georgia will be just fine. Kirby has proven to be one of the absolute best around at recruiting both elite coaching talent and elite players to Athens, both through the portal and through high school recruiting. He's handled large coaching overhauls in the past already, and in the event that they lose a lot of other coaches to other schools, I think he'll be more than prepared for that. Losing Burton is, to me, the most intriguing loss so far, and it definitely opens up the door for Georgia to add a one-year rental at wide receiver, maybe two in the portal. Regardless of where Georgia chooses to go in the portal, they will definitely add some players to the team who will most likely turn into real contributors in some form or fashion down the line. We've already seen them do this with guys like Darian Kendrick. Tyke Smith would have started this past year if he didn't have season-ending injury. He will start next year. JT Daniels was a guy that Georgia has got out of the portal. Georgia is a history now of picking up onesie, twosie guys to lead through the portal, and they're always going to be guys who are looking to contribute and start pretty much immediately. Kirby doesn't like to get developmental guys out of the portal as much. He likes to get more of the veteran one-year rentals, and then his developmental guys he'll bring up out of high school. But like I said, Georgia will be completely fine. Stetson Bennett coming back gives you a lot of continuity on the offense, even if a lot of people are going to hate on him. That certainly answers the biggest question mark for me heading into the next season, which was the quarterback position. There's a lot of things swirling around there. Now with Stetson coming back, that all calms down a little bit. Georgia is still ridiculously talented next year. Yes, they lose a lot of talent to the NFL, and they're losing guys to the portal. I promise you they're going to pick up just as many guys back in the portal. They have another top 10 recruiting class coming in, and the guys that they're returning are also absolutely amazing. Especially, I mean, they have a lot of depth players who haven't got a lot of significant playing time yet that are coming back that are going to really break onto the scene this year. They have a couple super seniors. The point is, Georgia's going to be just fine. Anybody who's that concerned about them, don't be it. I'm not saying that they're going to repeat or anything like that. Way too early to make any predictions. But Georgia's not just going to fall off a cliff. They're going to continue to be the cream of the crop in the SEC East and going to be contending for SEC championships and national titles because of that. But with all that being said, that'll do it for this video. Let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think about the Georgia transfer portal situation right now, the future of the roster, the future of the coaching staff as a whole. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave a like because it helps the channel grow tremendously. Also, subscribe to the channel for more college football content like this in the future because I will be continuing to upload college football stuff as regularly as my schedule will allow it going forward. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.